Hey everybody, I wanted to post a short, or as it may turn out again, not too short video addressing a couple of topics that actually kind of came up. And every time I bring this up on social media, part of it's my problem with tweets. They tend to be very pointed, sometimes even sharp. But I tweeted about self-published eschatology works that I'm not really interested in reading them. I think it went something like, yes, I'm interested in eschatology. No, I'm not. Don't want to read your self-published book on the topic. So first of all, I just want to provide a little bit of context for that very specific quote about self-published eschatology books that people want me to read. But then I want to step back because inevitably when I post on this on Facebook or Twitter or something, it always brings up all kinds of related discussions on publishing, self-publishing, traditional publishing, academic publishing, peer review, academia, the guild. Uh, Within about three posts and responses, I'm called an elitist snob of some sort or regarded that way. And I thought, let me just kind of clear the air here and explain what my concerns are and what they aren't, because as some of you already know, I engage in self-publishing. So it's not, I'm not opposed to this in particular, but I want to be honest and clear about some of its positives as well as deficiencies. So first of all, and this is going to be, I have no outline here. I'm just going to be talking, shooting from the hip a little bit and talking from the heart. I want to first acknowledge how absolutely frustrating the publishing world can be, just to forget the foot in the door. I mean, that's already the hardest thing. And then once you even have a foot in the door, what do you do next? So it's a long and difficult process to be recognized even as worthy of receiving an idea uh, for a publisher to even take you seriously. And I very much understand the motivation to kind of short circuit that process and go straight to self publishing. And in some cases, frankly, it's easier and better. And there are some positives and negatives about self publishing or publishing through very little accountability and peer review and rigmarole and hassle, with even some um, publishing companies. I'm not going to name any names here, really, except maybe in my own personal stories. Publishing companies that assist um, writers, authors to get work published with some editorial assistance, almost always for a fee. So, as I mentioned, I have traditionally published as well as self published a number of things. So, my publishing work began, hold on, let me look what the publication date was on this one. My publishing work began in 2006. Now, I had already published in peer-reviewed journals, Trinity Journal. I published article, Bibliotheca Sacra, published articles, contributed in a kind of team, corporately authored work at one point while I was a PhD student. So I'd been engaged in academic work and peer-reviewed publishing at an academic level early on at the article level. But as far as my first book was with a traditional publisher, very small publisher, Bakersfield Teen Press, that did very focused work for the homeschool market. And it was a first work of fiction for reluctant reader preteen boys. I mean, that is definitely not a bestseller market for sure. Uh, I had been halfway through a prequel to that in a series that was supposed to be a series of juvenile fantasy adventure books, and the company went belly up, and so I got all those rights back, and I just kind of let them sit, as well as the prequel and an idea for a sequel, and I just let those things sit. So, uh, fiction was. This is not just a theologian trying to dabble in fiction. I was actually trained in creative and fiction writing at college and had most experience in that prior to engaging in academic work and writing. So that was my first foray. Then my first book, uh, I had written for about for 5 years as a staff writer for Insight for Living Ministry, and done a lot of article writing and editing and collaborative writing, product creation, and then headed up their writing publishing division. So I was in a very privileged position to have connections with publishers, etc. And that is where I met my agent through connections there, who took me on and represented me for my first um, full length book, which was Retro Christianity, which I think I published in 2013. I think so. I think that was 2012, maybe 2013. I should look that up, but I don't own a copy of it anymore. So from that point on, I've been represented by a literary agent, Steve Laube, Laube. He is pretty well known in the Christian, both fiction, nonfiction market. So already I know that puts me at an advantage that some people don't have, having gotten an agent that represents me in my nonfiction work. So from there, I did the Exploring Christian Theology trilogy, co-authored Urban Legends of Church History, some other academic work. So I have a pretty wide and broad experience in contracted traditional publishing. And my experience has been different than others. I've written by invitation in the Brill Encyclopedia of Early Christianity. I've written by invitation to the Cambridge Companion on Apostolic Fathers. I have a forthcoming chapter in the Baylor Handbook on the Second Century. I've written in a number of these strictly academic publications. The Apostolic Fathers Commentary series was by invitation, my new translation and commentary on Shepherd of Hermas. So I do hear colleagues sometimes complain, and their story is a bit different than mine. Sometimes complain that conservative evangelicals or evangelicals of a certain theological persuasion or whatever don't get taken seriously, and their work isn't considered. My experience has been that if you have demonstrated yourself through shifting into low gear and really slowly, year by year, working to establish yourself in a particular field, that's not really the case. I still get ideas rejected constantly. I just pick up and move on, or try another venue, or we try another publisher or whatever. So the reality is not every publisher is going to publish everything I want to publish. And maybe it's because they're bad ideas, or maybe they just don't like them or disagree with them theologically, or I disagree with my methodology or presuppositions. That's fine. But what I can't be accused of is doing shoddy research and writing. That I worked really, really long and hard to be able to establish myself as somebody who can be relied upon, for instance, to do the Brill Encyclopedia of Early Christianity, the articles on modalism and Sabellianism. So it's you can do that despite my conservative, evangelical, and even dispensational credentials. I can still function in those worlds. So I kind of resist or push back against the common narrative that people that are conservative in their theology can't engage in that level of scholarship and be taken seriously. So I don't think that's always true. It can be sometimes true. So let me tell the story on Fathers on the Future and how that came about, and that is a little bit telling. I understand my very first academic scholarly article, published back in 2001 when I had just finished my THM, was beginning PhD coursework, was on the topic of where people found the rapture in the book of Revelation. It was just sort of like an interesting study, and then making a case for one particular view. And it was a 50-page article that Trinity Journal was very gracious to publish, and followed up with other articles since then. But I started working in kind of an academic, peer-reviewed eschatology in various ways, history of eschatology, the patristic period, especially with the church councils and Barnabas and Shepherd of Hermas and Apostolic Fathers and their eschatology. So I've over the last 20 plus years, I've been working 25 years actually, been working really hard in those fields in peer-reviewed journals primarily. And as I have taught eschatology, basically multiple sections every semester for going on 19 years now, almost 20 years, I've developed a lot of notes and a lot of work in that field. So I've established myself with a bit of expertise in the field as well as patristics. So I thought that was a great time to pitch the idea for an academic, scholarly defense and articulation and defense of my Irenaean form of premillennial eschatology. So, of course, I worked through my agent Steve Lavi, and he pitched it to a lot of the academic publishers. And I'm not going to lie, and I'm not going to name names. I'll only name the name of the publisher that actually picked it up. But it is true that a couple of those publishers seem to have been uninterested in the book because of its approach. That is, they did not want to publish and promote a premillennial eschatology, especially from somebody who teaches it has come from a dispensational school. And that's unfortunate, but it's a reality. I'm not going to pout about it. It's their $10,000 or whatever they want to invest in a book. If they don't want to invest it in promoting a premillennial eschatology, that's their decision. But those same publishers would have no problem publishing, amillennial, postmillennial, and other perspectives. They just weren't interested in this theology. Again, that's First Amendment. They have the freedom to do whatever they want with their money and their speech. Several publishing houses that were actually friendly toward my perspective, more in general, didn't want to publish an academic work. They wanted to publish a popular level end times book. We had two of them suggest that no, Spiegel, set aside the academic approach and publish a popular level book. Why? Because again, publishing companies want to sell books. It costs them a good $10,000 just to upfront costs and editing and typesetting and printing and all of that at least. And they want a return on their investment, and popular level sells, whereas academic doesn't. So some of it is not theologically driven, it's financially driven, and they don't want to publish those things that aren't going to give a good return on their investment. So I'm going to be honest, after several months of multiple publishers, traditional publishers saying no to the project, and you can basically name the major Christian publishers, and they said no. They finally, I just let the thing die. I figured, well, there's no way to publish this. Maybe I'll just keep publishing small studies, small articles, and teaching this. Finally, out of the blue, my agent emailed me and said that Paul Hendrickson at Hendrickson Publishers is interested. Asked whether my book was originally titled "Remembering the Future" or something even before that. My eschatology book, whether it's still available. Yeah, of course, nobody wants it. And he said, yeah, somebody from our editorial committee wants to talk to Spiegel. So we did I think it was going to be a video conference. It may have ended up being a telephone conference. Somebody from the editorial committee that makes the decisions on what to publish interviewed me. And I got the feeling that he was trying to determine whether I was, knew I wasn't a hack because I did have the credentials and experience, but wanted to see if I was a quack. And I get it, because for some reason, eschatology, end time stuff we've got to be honest, attract a lot of quacky ideas and a lot of quacky people. So he was confident that my approach was not going to be quacky. maybe a little unusual, but not quacky. And so he recommended publishing the book. Another several months later, finally, after Hendrickson was purchased by Tyndale House Publishing and some things were ironed out, we got a contract for it. So Hendrickson was really great to work with. They provide editorial work, supervision, peer review. I remember at one point questions were asked because the work was going through a process of I think a Greek Orthodox, somebody out there, I don't know who it was reviewing a lot of my patristic stuff in the Greek, my working in Greek, and so a number of academically trained and credentialed scholars, even if they didn't agree with my assertions in the book, were going to make sure that I was at least not making all kinds of factual errors. And so they were holding me accountable. I had to go back and do some revisions, some not corrections of fact, but do you really want to say this way kind of things, or do you want to maybe put this in an online excursus? Do we really have to, like, a lot of editorial work created a much better product. The original book manuscript was twice the size of what it is now. The result of cutting it down was the Fathers on the Future, or www.fathersonthefuture.com online excursus, which produced a lot of things. Many of those things had been edited. A lot of those are just articles or academic papers and things that I wrote through the years. So it's a result of a long process. So that, having said that, yeah, there were forces that didn't want to publish my work because of its theology. There were forces that didn't want to publish it because of financial reasons, but I could have published that, self-published it, but it would have short-circuited it. I promise you, the final product would not have been as high a quality as the peer review and the editorial direction and input that I got from Hendrickson Publishers. But that's slow and it's expensive. And I didn't get the title I wanted, which was Remembering the Future, but that's okay. I'm not, they're the ones who have to sell the books. Okay, so that gives you kind of a glimpse of the behind the scenes process in traditional publishing. It can be frustrating. And a lot of more doors have closed on me in the traditional publishing route than have opened, and they continue. I have what I think are great ideas, and doors keep closing. For instance, one of my favorite ideas that I've ever had that I'd be willing to publish with no royalties is the Let the Wise Hear Devotions for Thriving in Theological Studies, which I ended up self-publishing because it's a super narrow market. I mean, how many devotions directly designed for biblical and theological studies at the bachelor's and master's and PhD level? That's a very narrow market. So I get why publishers won't want to publish it, even though I think it's probably one of the most important things I've ever written. But I had to self-publish it. But something like that, as devotions, don't really need academic vetting. So here's where I'm going to talk about the difference between academic and non-academic publishing. Academic publishing does require a peer review process, showing it to your friend, showing it to your fellow colleague who has a PhD or whatever. It's not the same as peer review at academic level. Peer review, the academic level, means somebody who does not have a vested interest in the outcome of this, who is credentialed, who knows the field, and is not your friend, and is charged with making a decision whether this is a viable thesis and a good argument, good evidence, etc. Usually it's multiple people making that decision. I've served as a peer review for academic publishers. They've sent me material, I've looked it over, presented my opinion on it, and they factor that in their decision. And journal articles do the same thing. That's academic publishing. You're actually on purpose engaging in the accountability of fellow scholars to hold you on, make you honest, and you're accountable to those things. I've not had problems with that. If I do shoddy work, it should not be published, at least not as academic publishing. And if other people do shoddy work, it should not be published as an academic work. Now, there is a difference between scholarly writing and academic publishing. Academic publishing implies you are a member of and accountable to the academy, whatever that field is. New Testament studies, Old Testament studies, theological, historical studies. There are people who are credentialed in those fields who can evaluate your work, and you should invite that. You should expect that. Scholarly writing is you're writing at a certain level. It's more the level of the writing, and you can do that without peer review, and you can make that available online, etc. But understand it doesn't have the accountability, which doesn't mean it's bad. It just means you have to acknowledge that people have not checked your work, and this is totally you kind of going out and presenting this. So self-publishing is, if you're going to do academic self-publishing, that's kind of where I'm going to feel it's not the best approach. Even if you have your friend or other people look at your book or even write blurbs for your book, it's not the same process. And you can do scholarly self-publishing, which is fine. And if the goal is simply to get your views out there, get your ideas out there, it's great. It's fine. If your goal is to contribute positively to a field through quality work that is then now going to be taken seriously and incorporated into other people's research and writing, for which they're accountable, self-publishing is not the route to take. I'm just being honest with you. It's not me being elitist or snobby. It's again, what is your goal? Getting your ideas out there is one thing. Contributing positively to the academy and to the guild and to the furtherance and advancement of knowledge and the scholarly debate and having your voice heard. Don't whine. Let me be blunt. This is going to hurt, but don't whine when your ideas that you got out there by short-circuiting the academic process are not taken seriously by the academy. There is a process that you can follow, and you can do it. I did it. I'm a conservative, evangelical, free church dispensationalist, for goodness sake. If there's anybody who should be not taken seriously, it's me at the surface of it. But if you show that you can do quality work in the field, they will take you seriously. Fiction, from that one foray, I've continued then to publish my fiction myself. My agent looked at some of my stuff early on and thought it wasn't marketable. It wasn't kind of up to snuff. The Christian sci-fi, very heavy philosophically, and it just is pretty heavy and probably not saleable, at least in the market today. But a lot of my fiction has been very successful. But I am completely, if you self-publish, remember, you are completely responsible for all your promotion and marketing. Ironically, my series Topia and Elegy, these are the English versions, Topia, Elegy, I obviously highly recommend them, have been picked up by a Portuguese publisher, a traditional publisher in Brazil, to be published in Portuguese. The AI Theist is being considered currently by a publisher in Germany for German translation. So I'm not opposed to traditional publishing, but it's far less necessary. There's no peer review in fiction. And because my fiction is, the one thing you have to worry about purchasing self-published books in fiction is literally anybody through Amazon, which is where I publish, anybody can write something and publish it. So the literary quality often is very, very sketchy and spotty. I think I've demonstrated over the years that I can write fiction and nonfiction at a readable literary quality. I'm primarily trained in fiction writing, so anybody who reads my fiction will know I can do it. It's not a matter of being able to do it. It's a matter of I don't have the patience for traditional fiction publishing at the moment. Doesn't mean I won't do it later. Okay, so those of you engaged in biblical, theological, historical writing and self-publishing, I know it sounds like sometimes I'm stepping on your toes or kicking you in the shin a little bit when I make comments about self-publishing. My tweet about self-publishing End Times book is not about you. Trust me, you're not the problem. The problem are the books I keep getting in my office that are really, really bad and really written by quacks and hacks pretending that, yeah, I don't have any qualifications about this except the Holy Spirit. Well, why don't you say something that actually agrees with Scripture then? They're really bad. And if you don't believe me, come to my office and I will show you. So it's very narrowly focused on uh, quacks that think that they have this revolutionary, never before thought of end time scheme, and uh, the only way to get it out to the world is to self publish. It's a lot of delusionary thinking at work there. Uh, so it's not about you. Self publish, get your ideas out there. If they're ministering to people, it's fine. But then again, I don't want. I think it's illegitimate then for you to complain that the academy and the academic writers are not factoring in and citing and footnoting your work, and incorporating it into um, the field, because it is just not the way it works. And those of you who are credentialed, who have done master's level and doctoral level work, and have all of the background in scholarly research and writing, have been vetted and have gone through a dissertation process where you've been had your work really, you know, worked over, and you know what that's like. Uh, I know it can be very hard as you're trying to knock on the door, push through the doors, and into getting into academic publishing, but don't give up. Present papers at scholarly societies, publish your papers as articles in academic journals that are peer reviewed, contribute. Then will be invited or volunteer to contribute to edited volumes. And then from there, you will be able to enter into academic monograph publishing eventually if you continue to do a high quality work in the field. It's a long, decade long process. So don't give up. Go ahead and self publish, write fiction, whatever you want to do. But at the same time, the Academy does need your voice, and we want you to continue to present in those various fields in various ways. Long, long, long post. I apologize for it, but hopefully it's explained kind of my position on some of these things, and my very kind of fed up attitude toward the self-published end times books that are sent to me, books or pamphlets that are sent to me in my office. That's really the only thing I don't really want to read. I'm sorry. Uh, I recently read, just to be clear, I recently read a self a written, almost finished, almost self-published book on a defense for the existence of God that was sent to me by somebody who is not really active in the field. It is, I'm telling you, the best I've read on the defense of theism ever. And I actually put him in touch with my agent, and hopefully he'll be able to get that published eventually. But um, so I'm happy to look at other things. I don't have a lot of time for it, but again, my original tweet still stands. I really don't really want to see your self-published end times book that you're mailing to me out of the blue, um, unsolicited, and especially those who want me to adopt it and pass it down to my students. Not happening. All right. Enjoy. I appreciate all your interactions and feedback, and let me know if you have any questions or comments.